Hey, you're with us on Behind the Label. Quick sneak peek for an upcoming Beam series, Beam family series. And where are we?
We're at Limestone Branch.
Limestone Branch. So stay tuned.
So I took a sip, man, what a trip. I think it started making sense. Now I'm seeing clear, chugging down another beer, and I ain't gonna straddle that fence. Bourbon, whiskey, been good to me. Helping me see all the
Hey, welcome back. You're on part 2 with us on the Beam family.
Yes.
We're here on location at the Limestone Branch Distillery, home of Yellowstone brand Beam product.
Yep.
Owner by, I guess, Stephen. I guess he is the owner, right? Is he master
Steve and
distiller?
Paul.
Is he master distiller as well?
He is.
Okay.
So Paul and Steve own it. Steve is the master
He's
distiller.
the master distiller. Okay.
So-
And if you watched our first series, we finished up going through the first 2 straight branches, basically the trunk of the tree. We're going to start off with Joseph, but as an aside, on our last episode, we tasted some of the old tub, which was the originator
Yeah.
of the Beam line of.
It was the OG of the Beam.
It was the OG, yes. So if you want to be old school gangsta like Jerry, then you get you some old tub. But I was asking what the mash bill was, and we looked it up, and we came up with
75% corn, 13% rye, 12% malted barley.
So, and I would
Pretty standard.
Yeah, it's not. I was expecting it to be a little higher rye just because it's got a little more peat or a little more heat to it. But maybe because we had the wheated bourbon before and
Earlier today, yes.
and I just wasn't
Yeah.
expecting quite that pop in there. But it's a good bourbon. So now we're moving on as far as bourbons go. We're going to a Heaven Hill product.
Yeah.
Why are we doing a Heaven Hill? I thought we Hey, you're with Behind the Label. I'm Lowell. I'm from Belgrade Photography.
And I'm Jerry, and I'm wet.
He's wet.
You're
Oh,
barely under the.
we picked a good day to
Yeah, we
do
picked
some on location
kind of a
down in
rainy
Bardstown. Yeah, it's followed us around all day. So we're at Heaven Hill, the Bourbon Heritage Center. So make sure when you Google that you get the right Heaven Hill.
Yeah, there's one in Louisville.
Yes.
And there's one here where we are in Bardstown.
Yes. This one is actually pretty much all that they don't distill here at this one. They distill at the one in Louisville, but they age. Yeah, and that's the new Rick House behind us with the new Heaven Hill sign on it, the glass. So, and a lot of people may not realize that this actually goes with our Beam series.
Yep, I didn't know that until you sent me all the information. So.
Yep, long line of Beams worked here and ran this distillery. So that's something you watch our future episodes.
So watch and pay close attention because it's going to get convoluted.
Yes, very much so.
See you later.
See ya.
We're doing beans.
And one aside, this is about $15.
$15. Okay.
For that
And
one, yeah,
this is
that's
a 375.
Yes. So why do we have Heaven Hill?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
not, that can't be a bean product.
Okay. So we've been talking about, we come over to Joseph. So we know there's Joseph, David, and Jack. Most of what we're going to talk about is Joseph. But kind of in order to talk about Joseph, he had 2 sons.
Joseph had a
Minor Case.
really cool name guy.
Minor Case, I love that
Case.
name.
Like what?
It's a great
Yeah, I
name.
agree. That's kind of like a superhero name.
And Joseph L.
And
Now
Joseph
Joseph
L.
L. Beam, there's some stories about Joseph L. We talked about him when we did our Lawrenceburg thing on the Rippies. Remember the master distiller that took apart Waterfield and Fraser and shipped it down to Mexico for Mary
Oh, yes,
Dowling
I do, yes, I
and
do,
reassembled it? Joseph L. Beam.
Ah.
So Jim Beam's first cousin.
Jim Beam's first cousin helped
Yeah.
the Rippey family.
Well, it was the Dowlings. But Mary Dowling.
But tied in with the Rippey
Yeah,
story.
they're all-
I should say
yeah.
tied in with the Rippey story.
Yeah. So he actually did work where Jim Beam did not do anything during Prohibition. Joseph L. was down in Juarez, Mexico, making bourbon at Waterfield and Fraser. He actually worked at quite a few other distilleries too. He worked at what's called the Frankfurt Distillery, Four Roses. So during the end of Prohibition. But as we got at the end of Prohibition and Prohibition was repealed, he got together with a group. 2 of the members were Shapiro brothers, and they built a distillery that became known as Heaven Hill Distillery. Yes, so that was right after Prohibition.
So the beam name is basically a part, or it was one of the founders then of Heaven Hill.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. So,
And that was Joseph L. that was part of the
Joseph L. He also worked at Sitzer-Weller too. So I mean, he worked
Okay,
at.
so
he was around.
He has his fingers in a lot of different.
He does, which
different
all the
things.
beams did. All the beams did. One cool thing, I want to talk about Joseph L.'s sons. We won't go real in depth on them.
Okay.
We'll come back to Harry.
All right.
But here's the distillery some of them worked at. Elmo Beam, one of his sons. He had 9 sons, 7 worked at distilleries. Were master distillers. He worked at Maker's Mark.
And if you again watched our last, I guess that was our last series on the Samuels. That's what the Samuels basically became
Maker's Mark. Yeah. So Elmo worked there. Everett Beam worked at Mixtures up in Pennsylvania, doing rye. Wilmer Beam worked at Yellowstone, which you'll hear in hopefully a soon upcoming series, which Yellowstone's made here now.
Right.
Otis Beam worked at quite a few distilleries, including the T.W. Samuels Distillery, which is where we were at this morning, filming the end of the Samuel series. Desmond Beam worked at Old Kennebec and Park and Tilford. That was in Louisville. Roy Beam worked at the Frankfurt Distillery, which became Four Roses. And then Roy had 2 sons, Charlie, who worked at Seagram's and Four Roses, and Jack, who worked at Yellowstone. So 7 of his 9 kids.
Of Joseph L.'s kids.
Were master distillers in all these different distilleries.
Yeah, it's the more you learn about bourbon, the more you see that it's definitely kind of a old boys club. Everybody was tied together either through business dealings or marriage, oftentimes both.
Yeah. So what we're drinking now is Heaven Hill.
Heaven Hill.
This is a little bit higher in the corn, 78, 10, and 12. So 10% rye, 12% malted barley. So a little bit higher corn than the old tub. So we go back to Harry. Right here. Joseph L.'s son. When Joseph L. went together with the group and built Heaven Hill, Harry came on as the first master distiller.
At Heaven Hill.
At Heaven Hill, yes. Harry had originally worked with James Beam at their distillery. So he left there and joined his dad at Heaven Hill and was distiller there for a long time. So here's where we make the jump.
Just if you can't see that on there,
Yeah.
these are when they died, not when they
Lived and died,
not
yes.
when they worked at the distillery.
Yeah, over here on this side, that's when he started working at the distillery. So that kind of gives you a little reference point there. So he started in 35, right when they built the distillery. So that's Joseph L. So that's one son from Joseph. He had 2 sons. But in order to complete this line of Heaven Hill, we got to jump over here
To on David's side.
to David M., the middle son of David. He had 2 sons that were big into distilling. One we'll get to in our next shooting, which is James B. James Beauregard Beam.
You may have heard of him.
Yes. But the one we're concerned about today is the other brother, Park. Jim Beam's brother.
Park
Yeah.
Beam.
Yeah. He actually worked with Jim at, Beam and Hart and what became Jim Beam. He was pretty much master distiller at Jim Beam.
Jim Beam.
Yes. But his son, Earl, replaced Harry at Heaven Hill as the next distiller.
So they would be first cousins.
Yes. Well, yeah, let's see. Joseph and so it gets complicated.
Yeah.
Joseph and Jim and Park are first cousins.
Oh, that's right.
So
Okay,
they-
yeah.
so
So they would be second cousins.
They
then.
would be, yes.
Yeah. So for all you genealogy people out there, so they would be second cousins.
I think. I'm from Eastern Kentucky. You'd think I would know
That's
that.
what I
Double
was gonna say.
cousins.
All the double cousins
Yeah.
and stuff. So if you look, because both these guys would be their uncles,
Yes.
so that would make him
Cousin.
first cousin.
Yes. So Earl took over from Harry, and he started in 1946. So Harry was there for about the first 11 years as
At
master distiller
Heaven Hill.
at Heaven Hill. So a lot of people don't know this line. I mean, like I said, after Earl, probably the name that everybody knows is Parker. It was actually, Earl Parker Beam. So he went by Parker.
Parker.
He was there 40-some years. So he has brands after him, Parker Heritage, some real nice brands. He's the one.
Now these brands are still out.
Yes, his Parker Heritage is a nice. It's
really? That's probably,
it's a premium brand.
That's probably why I haven't
Premium
heard
brand. But he's the one that kind of brought Heaven Hill through the down, the 80s, 70s and 80s.
70s and 80s.
When bourbon was down, and he was the one that brought it through the what we probably consider the golden age now. So you got to think about this line. So 1, 2, 3, 4. Now these were cousins. 4. For the cousins, it would have been 5th generation.
Right.
Parker was 6th.
6th.
And in 2017, 2013, before Parker passed away, I think he passed away with Blue Gare disease. He turned it over to his son Craig. Now Craig,
He's 8th generation Beam.
7th.
7.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3,
4,
4, 5, 6, 7.
7.
Okay, 7. Okay.
Yeah. So 7th generation. And he actually retired from his position actually in 2018. So from the time that Heaven Hill started till 2 years ago, Beam was a master
There's a
distiller.
Beam at the helm of the distilling.
That was the master distiller. So, I mean, now I know Craig retired. What do you think about that? Everybody knows Jim Beam with their 7 generations, but Heaven Hill, there was 4 generations just at Heaven Hill.
Yeah.
So eventually they had a 7th generation master distiller.
And it's amazing that, like off the top of my head, but I'm sure I have it written down somewhere, there's no way I know who my 6th let's see, what would that be, like a great-great-granddad? So the grandfather, let's see, great-grand, so 1, 2, 3, 4, do you know who your 4th great-grandfather is?
I have no idea. I have not the slightest idea.
So it's pretty cool just to have that, and not only that family history, but think about doing the same thing, crafting the same thing for that long and that much heritage.
And it's funny, earlier today we were doing some little on-location shoots, and we were at a Heaven Hill warehouse facility, which actually was the home of Beam and Hart Distillery before Jim Beam built, Jim Beam.
Yeah, so it was a Heaven Hill property that had an old Jim Beam distillery
on it. Yes. So, that's going to be pretty much our line through Heaven Hill. So it's kind of like you go down and all of a sudden we zigzag. So we make some football moves and we come to the end of the line at Heaven Hill.
Well, of Heaven Hill. That's why we have it sort of second on the page here. But at least next time you grab up some Heaven Hill product, you'll know that you're also tasting some nice Beam.
If you're buying it right now, it was distilled by Beam.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So 2018. So it's still been, it's been distilled by Beam. So that kind of wraps up our segue into Heaven Hill. I want to finish mine off.
Yeah, we'll finish
and we'll
this
just cheers.
Cheers
To Heaven Hill.
to Heaven Hill.